Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. We're excited to announce that registration for our fall cohort of the Next Economy MBA is officially open. Beginning September 30th, 2025, this 9-month facilitated learning journey was created for listeners like you, the entrepreneurs, artists, community leaders, and other folks on the front lines of the Next Economy movement. Based on our 15 years of experience working with over 500 different social enterprises, we'll explore the pitfalls of the business-as-usual economy and dive into key business principles from a regenerative and equity-centered lens, all while fostering the community and connection we need to stay resilient, inspired, and motivated in our movement to create a world that works for all of us. Interested in learning more? Join us for a free intro session where you can meet course facilitators and hear from alumni to determine if the program's a fit for you. Plus, you can save 20% on tuition when you register before August 11th during our early bird sale. Get started at lifteconomy.com/MBA. Thanks for listening, and now onto the show.
Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy.
Hello and welcome to Next Economy Now. My name is Sean Berry and I am a worker owner and partner at Lift Economy. And today on the podcast, my guest is John Abrams, and I'm so excited to have John Abrams back to the show. He was with us 8 years ago in 2017. Very excited to have him back and hear what's new about his work. So a little bit about John. John is a founder of South Mountain Company, design, build, construction firm out of Martha's Vineyard. And he famously converted that company to a worker co-op and became one of the worker owners. And he detailed that company transition in his first book, Companies We Keep, which was a big influence on me. And John is just releasing his second book, Founder of the Future. John, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here.
Great to be here, Sean. Nice to see you again.
Great to see you. So, yeah, I mentioned your first book was a big influence on me. And so I'm curious, maybe catch us up on what you've been up to in the last 8 years and why this second book.
So the last 8 years, maybe 3 of them, we spent. So South Mountain converted to a co-op in 1987. And at the time, there were maybe a dozen worker co-ops in the U.S. and no infrastructure. And I had a very long tenure to next generation leadership, 35 years. So I was very young and I had no intention of leaving. And in 2014, we started to plan for the transition, for the leadership transition. We had done the ownership transition way back when. And by the way, I advocate for mid-career, earlier ownership transitions because they're more transactional and you get the ownership piece out of the way, disentangle it from the leadership transition, which is much more complex. So earlier ownership transitions and then a long runway to the leadership transition. So we started in about 2014. And in 2019, we had a plan. And we gave ourselves 3 years to build the leadership capacity that we needed. Most of it was all there in place internally. So we went through this intensive process of assessing the leadership skills that were in the firm and what we needed. And it was pretty amazing because we had this very aligned leadership team. But in doing that and figuring out my departure, my exit after almost a half a century, there was a lot to consider. And at times there were some difficult conversations. And I think, a friend of mine says the health of an organization is inversely proportional to the number of undiscussables. And I think we got rid of all the undiscussables. Everything was on the table. And it was a thrilling process. So in December of 2022 was my retirement date. And at that point, I committed to 6 to 8 hours a week and serving on the board for 2 years. And during that time, I had no responsibilities, and all I did was whatever I was asked. The 2 years went well, and then at the end of it, so now I have no formal relationship with South Mountain Company except a ton of incredible memories and a group of wonderful people that I love and see. So that was really the big part of this piece of my life, was that transition. And now I have a completely different work life. And I got to say that it is truly remarkable to watch them completely take the steering wheel and drive it to a place where South Mountain is becoming a completely different company. And I think they're going to take it to places that my kind of casual leadership style may never have been able to do. So it's fun to watch. The next 50 years is underway.
Oh, I love it. And what might be surprising or different that they might be doing that you wouldn't have done or thought of?
Well, it's a younger group of people. They are tremendously technologically inclined. They are beautifully inclusive. They're just elevating, is what I would say. It's not that the values are the same, the guiding principles are the same, but they are putting their stamp on it.
I also want to just appreciate and celebrate you as a fellow builder, right? We met when I was a cabinet maker and I had a cabinet shop, and you were talking about cathedral building, right? And this idea of building something that might outlive you. I'm imagining that you might have a special type of satisfaction at this moment, looking at this business moving forward with a new batch of owners and a new direction and going places that you would have never conceived. I'm just imagining you might feel like you built something that's pretty cool.
It's a remarkable thing to experience and to witness, because there's a clarity there about there's never not going to be, this company is not going to cease to exist. It's going to go on, and its place in the community is so pivotal. Yeah, it's tremendously rewarding to feel that. So the company was without me has similarities to the company with me in this way. I always thought that my career was pretty much made up of learning one thing after the other in a half-baked kind of way, but learning it just well enough to know how to hire people and find people that could do that thing better than I could do it. And so that's this progression that goes on and on.
Nice. Yeah. So tell us about Founder to Future then. So you've been walking your talk, right? You were the founder that saw the future and stewarded your own team on their way. And so now what? Like, why this book? Who's the audience? What's in it? What are you thinking the impact could be?
Well, first of all,
those are big questions, so feel free to kind of just take it.
I'll wonder with those. So, first of all, when I wrote this book over the last 2 years, I had no idea what would be happening at the time of its release. And I see the book in some modest way as an antidote to this current American spirit, the cruelty, the cynicism, the cowardice that seemed to have displaced, for the moment, our normal generosity, optimism, and courage. And we all know that the battle for the soul of this country has had this kind of times throughout our history, but better hearts and minds have always prevailed as we continue to, this long and arduous journey towards liberty and justice for all. And so I see this book in that context where, what may be unprecedented right now is the degree to which wealth inequality has spiked in recent decades. So when it comes to the pursuit of happiness and well-being, both the Democrats and the Republicans have left working people behind to a degree that's astonishing. And we can change that. And this book is about how businesses can enhance life through cooperation, collaboration, shared ownership. And it's really an ode to the America where everybody shares in the bounty and That's the message. That's the story. That's the hope. But the book was written with the audience in mind. Right now there are roughly 3 million small businesses in the US with employees, with founders over 55. And something's going to happen to every one of those businesses in the next 15, 20 years. Trillions of dollars of assets are going to move in that time. And, some of those businesses will be handed down within families. Some of them will unceremoniously close the doors, leaving gaps on Main Street. And many of them will be the targets of strategic buyers and private equity. And those businesses may be bundled, may be moved out of their community, may be sold for parts, and certainly will be the purpose with which those founders originally started them may not exist anymore. And most of those founders and their advisors, their attorneys, their bankers, their accountants, their financial planners, their advisors know nothing about the employee ownership options available to them. So that's who this book is written for, those owners and the 32 million people that work in those businesses and whose future depends on them. So I am hopeful that we will see widespread movement to convert to employee ownership. And we're seeing it. You see it. We're seeing it. Employee ownership in this country is, I think, in a particularly strong position right now.
One of the things that I've just noticed in terms of my view of the larger economy is there tends to be this idea of win-lose, right?
Yeah.
and this idea that you have to sacrifice something, so, okay, hey, we're trying to make $1 for business, so we have to sacrifice human rights, we have to sacrifice ecology. I think that's completely untrue. And part of what I see is you're putting on the table is win-win options.
And, triple bottom line thinking that values social progress and environmental progress as much as the bottom line encourages this kind of approach to business. And yes, all it does is it makes the business more effective, more profitable, better retention, more productive. So yeah, this idea that we have to take from them to give to others. And one of the things about owners selling their business to their employees is that both parties benefit. And, I think about how, in the 1930s to the 1970s, unions got such tremendous benefits for employees and wages went up, wealth inequality diminished significantly. And at the end of that period, like in the 1970s, the average corporate CEO made about 20 times as much as the average worker in those companies. Now it's up to 250 or 300. If the pace of wages had kept pace with CEO pay, the minimum wage right now would be over $100 an hour. Nothing like this has happened, right? So this is a chance. But there's also another challenge in this book, and it won't be for everybody. And that is that I feel like there are these 5 transitions that are important for companies to be working on. The ownership transition we've talked about, from proprietary ownership to widely shared and accessible to everybody. That's number 1. Leadership, moving from the original founder to the next generation. Mission, from unprotected mission to permanent preservation of purpose. It's a big one. Management and governance from top down, participatory and democratic. And finally, impact, from business as usual to certified B Corp force for good. Now, I don't expect that anybody is going to achieve all of those 5 transitions. Few companies do. But to be on that path and for that to be your intended goal, I think changes the business equation in a big way.
Absolutely. One question I had about that too is, how soon is too soon to start thinking about the exit? Or can it be too soon? Or is that part of the point you're trying to make, is like, if you're thinking the long game from the beginning, then that sets you up?
From the very beginning, I think so, because every bit of thinking and planning that you do about the future of the business only makes the business a better business right then. So I think it's something to think about from the beginning. And certainly when people get to mid-career in their 40s and their early 50s, that's the time. One of the things that happens, Sean, is that I see is that, and as you well know, that people never plan. There's no succession plan in place. And all of a sudden, somebody's 65 or 68 and they go, oh my God, what am I going to do with this thing that I put 30 years and heart and soul into? And they're ready to depart, but then they have to figure out the ownership and figure out the leadership all at once. And that's a heavy lift. So doing it in a measured way over time, I think, is important.
So is the employee-owned small business the new cathedral?
Well, the employee ownership helps it to be so, but it is not always the case, you know. So now we've got private equity getting very interested in employee ownership. And there are some very interesting experiments using private equity money for employee ownership. But mostly, I mean, I think what people have heard about is KK&R. They had a 60 Minutes episode about them. They're all in on employee ownership. But their model is just the same old private equity model, 5 to 7 years, then we'll sell it, maximize gain. And what happens in those cases is that, yes, some people do get rewarded to some degree, and that's good. But most of the profits go to the owners, and then all of a sudden, employee ownership no more. So without that permanent preservation of purpose, once that's a part of the structure, then, as you say, we're building cathedrals and we get to live in them for hundreds of years.
So maybe a couple of the case stories from the book. I mean, it's full of it, right? That's why you're kind of writing this book. Is you're not being fictional. You're saying, hey, look at here's all these people doing it, which is wonderful. Any particular case stories you'd like to?
Oh my God, there are a number of them that I really love. So this book talks about worker co-ops. It talks about ESOPs. It talks about employee ownership trusts, which are the three main forms of employee ownership. But I have this bias toward worker co-ops. That's what I've lived for all these years. It's what I know the most about. And what particularly attracts me to it is that democracy is baked into the structure of the worker co-op. Other forms of employee ownership can be democratic and mostly aren't. And so some of the examples I give of ESOPs and of employee ownership trusts are the ones that actually act like cooperatives, like some people even call some of these businesses ESOPeratives. And oh my God, when I think about these companies, I spend a lot of time talking to people about their companies and the passion and the enthusiasm. There's a company called Ward Lumber in upstate New York in the Adirondacks. And they, local lumberyard, they've got 2 locations, maybe 60 or 70 employees. And they converted to a worker co-op. And I was talking to a person who is the director of operations, and she was showing me around the yard. And I said, so what does this actually mean to you? And she said, the first year dividends that we got, which were phenomenally high, she said, that allowed me to put a down payment on a house. That's something I did not think I would get to for many years. And now the second year dividends, I started putting into a pension. And this was absolutely life-changing for me, she said. And when a company actually has some wealth to share, it's extraordinary what happens to people. So that was one that I loved. There's a chapter in the book about co-op ecosystems. This is another thing that has me. And there are several of the ones that are most well known in the world are in Mondragon in the Basque region of Spain and in northern Italy in Emilia-Romagna. And there are not a lot of worker co-ops in the U.S., maybe 1,000 right now. But in the rest of the world, it's by far the most widespread form of employee ownership. So Mondragon has, I think, 70,000 employees and 150 co-ops. Well, there's a group in Western North Carolina, about an hour west of Asheville, in the town of Morganton, called the Industrial Commons. And this is an area that was in the heart of the furniture and textile manufacturing industry in the US. Offshoring decimated it, all gone. And two women, Sarah Chester and Molly Hemtree, both of whom grew up in Morganton, went away to school and went away for work. And then they both came back to Morganton and said, this place is not the place that I grew up with. What can we do to restore that? And so they have set about to restore the industry that made that area so vibrant not so long ago. But they're doing it in a new way of creating these co-ops and creating circular industry where one company uses the waste from another company to make new things. And it is thrilling to see. So there's another less intentional ecosystem in Colorado where a number of co-ops have grown up to support each other. So associations like that cause proliferation. I've seen that in a peer group network where that I'm a part of, that's 70 businesses in the Northeast, and that get together to help each other become better businesses, better at accomplishing our missions. So when we first started this, there were 2 worker co-ops, and now there are maybe 15 and another dozen thinking about it or in the process. So when you're around that kind of mentality, it's incredibly effective. It's contagious. That's what I'm hoping for from this book, Sean, that it'll get out there and it will get that kind of contagious roll, get on a roll, and attract more and more attention to the employee ownership models.
Well, may it be so. I would like to see this. And I'm sure you've noticed, right? In the past decade, we've seen a threefold increase, right?
Yeah.
In worker co-ops, which I'm about 30 years cooperating, and it was quiet.
Very quiet,
in
right?
the early years, right? There wasn't that many people to cooperate with. So
Wait, so your woodworking cooperative, that started 30 years ago?
1997.
Wow. Yeah. That was early days.
Yeah. And so, so now there's the National Federation, there's a bunch of regional groups.
There's a whole infrastructure that's grown up in that time, in the last 20 years. And it's interesting to me how I feel differently. When I wrote my first book, I was telling the story that it was a labor of love. And this one was too. But I didn't really care if anybody read it. If somebody read it and got something out of it, that would make me feel very good. And this one, I feel like there's a message for these times that is important. And I want to do whatever I can to get that message out.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Just reflecting on my own arc, I had a woodworking co-op, and I knew I didn't want to do it the normal way, but I didn't know any other way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I found the cooperators that I was like, oh, that thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for that small group of folks that were getting together and having their own little conferences and skill shares, and, I never would have known.
Yeah.
And so I feel like hopefully this movement is the folks of us who know, and this is, I think, part of what I love about the movement is the people who know the value of being in the co-op ecosystem automatically have this kind of hospitality to extend it as an option of, you could be a worker owner too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I even just, it's such a part of my identity, but I hold it as like just fundamental human right.
Yeah.
Hey, you get to, you get to decide what you're going to eat. You get to decide, whatever things about your life. You should get to decide what it is you're offering as your labor and the terms on which you offer it.
And in this place where you spend more time in your life than any place except sleeping, it should be of our own making. It should have that kind of sense of satisfaction, and there's no reason for it not to. And once you experience it, I guess that's why I'm writing about it, because living that makes you feel so lucky to wake up every day and be able to go to work that you love.
And so this is a way to invite people in, right? That this is happening. And it's, I guess what's striking to me, right, is it's not just there's one, two little things. It's like the amount of case stories is amazing. I mean, I can't even, I was equally happy to see like a bunch of friends' names and stories in the book, and then
Yeah.
an equal number that I didn't know of yet.
Oh, that's great. That's
right?
so
Which
great.
is like,
Because if you don't know about them, nobody
yeah.
knows them. Yeah.
Well, and thank goodness that there's,
Yeah.
half the movement that I don't know of yet.
Yeah.
Because if I know of everything, then that's not very interesting.
Yeah. So it's really true. And I hope it will have some kind of infectious appeal. And I do think that it's really an information deficit that causes it to move as slowly as it does, even though it is moving at a much more rapid pace than it used to.
Yeah, I mean, if we could just imagine if any business education happening in this country included the full menu of employee ownership options and the benefits, how much more the economy would be moving that way, right?
That is one of my ambitions for this book, is that it ends up in business schools. And a couple of business professors have gotten in touch. And you know Michael Schumann? He's like the local economy guru, economist, attorney, and he teaches business. And he said, I'm bringing it. I'm bringing it. This is just what my students need.
Yeah, and I think not just the students, the world, because the other thing that, you didn't extrapolate in detail, but for these small businesses where the people are making decisions that affect their local communities, they take much better care of people in place, just automatically,
Absolutely. Democracy in the workplace tends to spread into people's civic lives.
Yeah, so it's not just that they're learning to cooperate at work and then they go home and then they're full capitalists or something.
Yeah. And then they're shaking a stick at their kid. No, it makes for kinder parenting. It makes for a better world.
So I'm curious, just, on a personal note for you, after so long on working with South Mountain Company, how has your just lifestyle changed? I'm asking for your report beyond ownership. So you've been an owner for so long.
It's very interesting to me that I always thought I had the best job in the world. I could do the thing that I was passionate about in the way that I wanted to do it. But really, what my work life was being responsive to the needs of others and being a servant leader. I didn't really chart my own course. I didn't have nearly as much freedom as I thought I did, but it was work that I loved. And so now I really have a tremendous freedom to do exactly what I want. And what that turns out to be is working with companies and helping them convert to new leadership and new ownership. So that's what I've been doing. I've been working on this book and then working on converting other companies to employee ownership. So maybe I'm making stories for the next book. I don't know. And when I started doing that, I had to learn so much, and I still do. Like I didn't have any clue what I was doing. So I'm in this learning phase, which is just incredibly energizing. So my post-work life is a new work life.
And so instead of knowing so much about that one entity, right? 50 years and every detail in and out, now you have this broader vision across multiple organizations that are doing similar transitions.
And what I'm learning is that every entity is its own entity, and what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. And, I should have known this because I spent my life in architecture and building, designing buildings for people, and everyone is different and people's needs are different. But that's kind of the exciting part of it, is unraveling what's going to work for this group of people, not what's going to work for this group of people. So that's the current work.
What I hear there is like curiosity rather than certainty, right? Instead of coming in, hey, I know how you do it. You just do it like this. Just listen to me. And instead,
I do not have a clue how you do it, right?
This is going to be interesting. Here's some ideas. Let's start to test things, right?
Yeah. So there's the baked in structure, but how you apply that structure varies tremendously. And so it really is a listening exercise of figuring out who are you talking to, who are you hearing, and what is it that will really make it work for them.
Can I ask what your thoughts are on retirement and how do you relate to that? What does it mean to you? And also, I guess I've just kind of smashed it in there of like this idea of work versus play versus
Well, that's the interesting part, Sean. I never was good at separating the two. I didn't really understand that separation. I started really working in the late 60s when we were part of the Back to Land movement, and fun was in everything. And like we never took a trip without a purpose. We were going to find some old bridge to take apart or something. So I didn't really have that go to work separation. And I still feel the same way. I mean, it's got to be fun for me, and it still is. And maybe a time comes, I mean, certainly a time will come when my capacity diminishes in a big way. But for now, this is what gives me great pleasure. The grandchildren do too, but so does this.
So, what's next for you?
Well, I'll probably have to write all those stories, Sean. The ones that we're making right now,
Yeah.
But I don't really know. Right now, there's more than I can do in the co-op conversions. And at 76 years old, I don't really want to start to build a business. So the fun of it is working with certain companies that I really understand well and referring, through this book project, I've gotten to know the people who do this work in this country. And so I can refer people out. And as long as that remains fulfilling, I'm going to keep doing that. And I'm going to publicize this book as much as I can. And I decided early on, not a ton of travel. So this is what I'm doing, podcasts like this, and I love it. And even with speaking engagements, I'm saying I'd love to do that as long as it's an interview format, because I don't want to make presentations. I want to have conversations. So that really works for me. And I'm going to work on getting this message out.
Well, thank you for spreading it. Really appreciate that. Let's see. Tell listeners how they could find the book. Is there a certain website, etc.?
So you can find the book on my website, where you can also sign up for my blog. I do a monthly blog that's just once a month, a mid-length essay about something that I'm thinking about. And you can find that there. Obviously, you can find it on Amazon and bookshop.org, which I always recommend because they share their profits with independent bookstores. But if you do get the book and you do read the book, writing reviews on Amazon or elsewhere is super helpful. So go to my website, abramsangel.com. That's Abramsangel with 2 L's in the angel.com. And you will find your way to the book if you don't just find your way another easier way.
Well, thanks so much, John. And yeah, it's great having you back on the podcast. And we'll look forward to having you back for your next book.
Well, it's really great seeing you again, Sean. It's great that Next Economy keeps doing this work that you're doing. It's tremendously effective and it's tremendously influential. So keep it up. I love it.
Thanks so much.
Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. If you enjoyed this conversation and are looking to dive even deeper into the B Corp movement, you'll love our new podcast, Beyond the B, hosted by Lyft Economy's Amy Allison and me, Ryan Honeyman. Beyond the B is your insider's guide to the B Corp movement. You'll learn about the new B Corp standards shaping our community, how the B Corp movement is navigating the various tensions and challenges of growth, and how businesses like Patagonia are putting their commitments to people and planet in practice. Check out our latest episodes and free resources at lifteconomy.com/beyond. You can also subscribe to Beyond the B on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening.
Hey, Next Next Economy Now listeners. I'm Anayana White, a Lift Economy Next Economy MBA alum and the head of communications at the American Sustainable Business Network, ASBN. ASBN is on a mission to connect and mobilize sustainable business leaders for a just and regenerative economy, and has launched a nationwide Tell Your Story campaign. Legislators and media are reaching out to ASBN for the stories and insights into how businesses are being affected by the current administration's policies. Do you have a story to tell? Use our guiding questions to craft and tell your story today at bit.ly/ASBN Tell Your Story. And find out more about our areas of impact and membership at asbnetwork.org.